Hey everyone, I got another video for you from FreedomFest. This one is one of the keynote speakers. It's Judge Napolitano. I gotta say his speech was very encouraging for people with an open mind who are not on the right or left, Republican or Democrat, but actually see the world for what it truly is and how it truly works. It's really encouraging to hear that some people have in fact been able to make a career in the mainstream. Judge Napolitano, working for Fox, is one of those examples. He believes in the Constitution, and I don't really necessarily see this country being able to last much longer as it currently is. Some drastic revolutionary change will be needed, and I think it's up to us to realize that the problems and the woes that we have been suffering from do in fact come from government and do not have any capacity of being fixed by government. My deepest fear is that yes, indeed, a economic collapse like we've never seen before will happen under Trump. Whether it's his first or second term, I do not know, but I think he will be reelected. People are starting to wake up still, and that is in part thanks to Donald Trump. But whether it happens during this term or the next, an economic collapse will happen. I do believe that. All of the signals are starting to kind of become clear to me, and a lot of experts are saying the same thing, honestly. I mean, just listen to anything coming from Peter Schiff or a number of people that I interviewed at the show. But if you just like to hear some people that have made it in the mainstream and are speaking some very wonderfully logical things, then this keynote from the Freedom Fest will be very refreshing. And I just want to finish by saying that this footage you're seeing right now, you can actually buy the entire speech as well as any speech from Freedom Fest on their website. So they have an excellent service where you can actually buy it all, basically. But if you buy everything that happened there, it's literally like $130 or something. And that's because, there's like 4 or 5 stages going on all the time. So even if you're there in person, you need to have a group of about 5 people with cameras for you to be able to get all that. So I didn't record everything because some of it I don't think would be popular enough to share, but this one I think is really enjoyable. So I think I got the entire speech here, and I've got another keynote that I'll share another video of Larry Elder, who basically spoke some other truths that are really encouraging. This one really has to do with basically the Constitution, the rule of law, and things that are to come. Probably, hopefully. Anyways, guys, please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Thank you.
Welcome to the stage.
Good morning, and thank you for coming to listen to me. Yes, I have a couple of messages that I want to convey to you, the most important of which is that the Constitution is not in very good shape today, because the people in whose hands we repose it for safekeeping do not protect it and keep it safe in the manner in which the framers intended. So a little bit of history, then we'll come back to contemporary issues, and a surprise announcement at the end. See if you know where this line is from. Some men say the world is flat, and some men say it is round. But if it's flat, could the king's command make it round? And if it's round, could an act of parliament make it flat? These words were used by Sir Thomas More, arguing to a jury in his own defense at his own trial, in which he was his own lawyer. The charge was treason. He knew that he would be convicted because his enemies had chosen the jury, and it didn't matter whether he could appeal to their common sense. Of course the king can't make a round earth flat. Of course Parliament can't make a flat earth round. But he was also appealing to their understanding of the natural law, of the order and nature of the truism that even governments have limitations imposed upon them by nature, because nature is the origin of our rights and not the government. This is an argument he made. This is an argument that he made for posterity. He knew it wouldn't resonate with the jury. By the way, the allegation and the proven act of treason was silence. His refusal to assert affirmatively that the king was the head of the church on earth. For that he was convicted of treason and he was executed. But this argument that there are natural limitations on government and that our rights come from our humanity, an argument that philosophers and scholars and even TV pundits today call the natural law, was not new with Moore. This has been articulated by Aristotle and codified by Aquinas and used by Moore and would be delved into in great detail by John Locke and his most famous pupil, Thomas Jefferson, who would write in the Declaration of Independence that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. And among these is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The use of the word inalienable weds the American Republic to the concept of natural rights, rights that come from our humanity at our very birth. In fact, it was these rights so assaulted by the king which fermented us to revolution. And one of the more ingenious ways that the king, when we were colonists, raised money was to impose the Stamp Act. The Stamp Act required every adult in the colonies, not in England, or there would have been a revolution there, but in the colonies, to have on every piece of paper in their possession, every book, every pamphlet, every legal document, every financial document, every letter, even a poster you were going to nail to a tree, had to bear the king's stamp on it. Where did you get the king's stamp? You went to an approved British post office in the colonies and you purchased the stamp. Question: how did the king and the parliament 3,000 miles away know if you had the king's stamp on the papers in your home? Answer: Parliament enacted the Writs of Assistance Act. See if this sounds familiar. This permitted a federal agent to go to a secret court and ask the secret court for a general warrant. A general warrant does not specifically describe the person or place to be searched or seized. It just says, search where you want and seize what you find. And this warrant would be delivered from the secret court in London to another government agent in the colonies. And it wouldn't be uncommon for you to hear a very polite on your door, and a British soldier or agent would present you with this warrant and enter your house ostensibly looking for the stamps. Of course, while there, they might take booze if you couldn't pay, you couldn't prove you had paid a tax on it. They might take furniture if it looked like it had been imported from somewhere outside the colonies and you couldn't show you paid the tax. They might even take over the house and exclude you from your own property, which, by the way, is why we have the Third Amendment today, prohibiting the government from doing that. While this was going on, it was so enormously unpopular, as you can imagine, some enterprising young students from the College of New Jersey, now called here. So the first thing they did was meet in secret. Secrecy again! In Philadelphia in 1787. The first argument they had was, where does our liberty come from? Jefferson wasn't there, but his friend Madison was. Madison would be the scrivener in 1787. It is his notes that would actually write the Constitution. And we know from his copious notes, which weren't released until after he died, that much of the language in the Constitution was purely Madisonian. But Madison argued, wait a minute, what do you mean, where does our liberty come from? We just fought a war against the mightiest tyrant on the planet and his army and his navy, claiming that our rights are inalienable. That means that our rights come from within us. They are natural rights. They don't come from the government. Well, wait a minute, John Adams and his acolyte, Alexander Hamilton, the father of big government, who didn't run into Aaron Burr about 30 years earlier. Nevertheless, But anyway, they argued that, look, government has limited resources, and liberty is like a spigot, and we can turn the spigot on and let the blessings of liberty flow when we can afford to. And we can restrict that spigot because we have so many limited resources, and there are times when we can't afford it. The compromise is the Constitution. The Constitution establishes the government, but it establishes a limited government. And the Constitution would never have been ratified without the promise of the Bill of Rights, because the Bill of Rights is what limits the government. So in 1787, the Constitution is promulgated. In 1789, it's enacted. In 1791, the Bill of Rights are added. You all know the opening lines of the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. When teaching constitutional law, we often say to first-year law students, they're 3 months out of college, what is the most important word in that phrase? Hint, this is a trick question. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. The most important word is the one that seems least important. The. By calling it the freedom of speech, the framers recognized that it pre-existed the government, that it pre-existed them, and that it didn't come from the government. The First Amendment doesn't say Congress shall grant freedom of speech. It says that Congress shall not prohibit it. Where does it come from? Under the natural law, it comes from our humanity. I mean, the natural law teaches that by the exercise of reason alone, we can discern right from wrong. By the exercise of reason alone, we can find the truth, unaided by any commands from the government. The First Amendment recognizes that. It doesn't say Congress shall give you freedom of association or the right to exercise your religious views or not to exercise your religious views. It says that Congress shall not interfere. So all of those rights in the Bill of Rights, your right to think as you wish, to say what you think, to develop your personality as you see fit. I've told O'Reilly many times he should be grateful that that's a natural right. Your right to associate, your right not to associate. Your right to worship, your right not to worship. Your right to defend yourself, which is not the right to shoot deer, it's the right to shoot tyrants if they take over the government. Your right to keep the government out of your house, the quintessential American right in the Fourth Amendment, your right to be left alone. That's the right. That is the right that the government violates when judges write opinions saying, well, the Fourth Amendment, which requires a search warrant in order to surveil our persons, houses, papers, and effects, only applies to the police. It doesn't apply to the National Security Administration. Of course, there is no such exception anywhere, except in the minds of judges, including the one nominated this week to replace Justice Kennedy on the Supreme Court. So you can see that a battle is coming. If your right to be left alone is a natural right, then how can the government take it away by legislation? Natural rights can only be taken away when we waive them. If I rob a bank, I'm presumed to waive my natural rights because I stole property that belonged to somebody else. But the government can't decide by legislation in advance that I am a criminal. Of course, it has, and these violate basic principles that underlie the American system. These are what we call negative rights. They restrain the government from interfering. If you have the time and the ability to read 230 years of Supreme Court opinions, you would see the long march of liberty diminishing and the great large mouth of government and its voracious appetite growing as liberty diminishes and government and order increases. Jefferson predicted in one of his last letters to John Adams. They wrote letters to each other during their period of retirement. They started out as bitter enemies, and they ended up as good friends. When Jefferson was Adams as vice president, they didn't speak. What do you mean they didn't speak? Well, you remember how everybody was elected in those days. Everybody ran for president. Whoever finished first became the president. Whoever finished second became the vice president. Think of the imagery. Hillary, can you cover this funeral for me today? We took care of that with the 12th Amendment, and then, of course, they began to run against each other, and the voters had a clearer view of who they wanted to elect. But sometime during the presidency of John Adams and the vice presidency of Thomas Jefferson, there appeared throughout the land something that is almost inconceivable today. Fear of the French. Fear of the French. Yes! The French had just cut off the head of their king. Jefferson was close to all these French people from when he was the United States ambassador to France under the Articles of Confederation. We have to do something about the French. So Congress enacted the Alien and Sedition Acts, which basically said, look, we're a growing country. You want to come here? Come. We'll give you 5 acres of real estate. You operate the real estate, you can become a citizen in 6 months, unless you're French. You have to wait 14 years so we can check you out. By the way, once you come here, and to everybody else that already is here, whoever shall utter untruthful words about the president or the Congress or the government shall be guilty of a crime punishable by 2 years in a federal prison. That's the Alien and Sedition Acts. Now, there's another head scratcher. How can the same human beings who had just written, Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech, enact a statute that abridged the freedom of speech? Oh, how different the world must look from the outside trying to get into the seat of power than it does from the seat of power looking outside. One of my favorite historical characters, Congressman Matthew Lyons of Vermont, the Ron Paul of his day, decided to challenge the Alien and Sedition Acts by uttering defamatory words about the president. The president was John Adams. He had a problem that afflicts a lot of middle-aged men, an ever-growing waistline. So Mrs. Adams, in order to cover up her waistline, prepared a purple robe for her husband to wear. He didn't like the way the robe looked in all purple, so she sewed gold epaulets on the shoulders. So this large, rotund, as wide as he was tall, President of the United States is walking through the muddy streets of Washington, D.C., covered in purple and gold, and he's confronted by Congressman Lyons, who says to him, "Good morning, your pomposity." Trying to goad them into indicting him under the Alien and Sedition Acts. They didn't fall for it. Next time he shows up, the press was there, and he says to him, "Good morning, your rotundity." And for that, a member of the United States House of Representatives was indicted, incarcerated, shipped to Boston, tried before a Boston jury, and was convicted of violating the Alien and Sedition Acts by mocking the president's waistline. He was shipped to a dungeon, which was actually the basement of a grand mansion, where he was chained to the wall for 2.5 years. And while in this federal dungeon, he did something that, if you are from New Orleans, Chicago, Boston, or Hudson County, New Jersey, you're familiar with. He ran for re-election from his jail cell. And he won. And of course, in a triumphal parade from Western Massachusetts down to Washington, D.C., he went with his supporters, expecting to find his rotundity in the White House, only to learn that instead of the wide as he was tall, purple-robed John Adams, was the tall, thin, red-haired hero he had worshipped, Thomas Jefferson, in the White House, who proceeded to pardon him and to return the 450 acres of land that the federal government had seized from him because he insulted the president's waistline. You can't make this stuff up. I tell you these stories from the early days because there is a history in our country of giving lip service to the values of the Declaration of Independence and the values of the Constitution. There is a history of making these strong and forceful arguments in favor of them when one is seeking office. And then there is a dark history of rejecting the promises and rejecting the challenges and rejecting the oath to uphold the Constitution. Even in the face of adversity and because one is in power. Something happens to people when they get into power. Here's another example. It's 1812, the fighting war of 1812. No one knows how it started. Either the British tried to take back the colonies or we tried to take Canada from them. Depends on which side of this historical argument you are. But the British soldiers were here. They burnt the Capitol. They burnt the White House. They were marching through Upper Marlborough and Madison when they showed up in the middle of the night and they arrested 5 townsfolk and announced they're going to be hanged at noon. The local militia kidnapped 5 British soldiers and announced they're going to be hanged at noon. The mayor, John Hodges, a name known to legal historians because of what I'm about to tell you happened to him, unarmed, unaccompanied, walked into the British encampment and said, we'll return your 5 people, your 5 soldiers, if you return our 5 townsfolk. Shakes hands with the British captain. People are returned. The British leave. 2 months later, the war is over. There's a tumultuous parade in Upper Marlborough, Maryland, celebrating this hero, Mayor John Hodges. The judges are there. The legislators are there. The sheriffs are there. The militia is there. The Grand Marshal of the parade is the one federal judge for the whole state of Maryland who introduces Mayor Hodges. Now, I hope what happened to him does not happen to me after I finish speaking. Because after getting all the accolades from the crowd, he walked down 3 or 4 steps from the podium and 2 strangers approached him. One of them put shackles on his wrists. The other put a piece of paper in his jacket. The piece of paper was an indictment from a federal grand jury in Washington, D.C., charging him with treason, providing aid and comfort to the enemy in wartime, which is the definition of treason in the Constitution, by returning the British soldiers to them. Oh my God, what a head-scratcher this is. So the trial, in those days these things happen faster, the trial happens 2 weeks later. The judge that introduced him at that parade is presiding at the trial. The jurors, they were all men at the time, unfortunately. The jurors at the trial were at the parade. The prosecutor was at the parade. The prosecutor stands up and says, Your Honor, we don't have to really present a case here. Everybody knows what he did. He returned British soldiers who were the enemy at the time. That's the definition of treason. Defense counsel stands up and says, Your Honor, everybody in this room witnessed what he did, and everybody in this room benefited from what he did. We really have nothing to say. The judge said, okay, gentlemen of the jury. I can't imagine saying this to a jury when I was on the bench. Listen to this. Gentlemen of the jury, we have a room prepared for you in the tavern across the hall. Across the street. The tavern keeper has a barrel of his best ale ready for you. After you consume dinner and after you finish the contents of the barrel, would you please deliberate the fate of the mayor? Fourth person stands up and says, look, we'll take you up on the food, and we'll certainly take you up on the barrel, but we don't need to deliberate. We already know the outcome. What is the outcome? You have a verdict already? Yes. You deliberated before I instructed you to. We didn't deliberate, but we know from the human heart what everybody is going to do. What is it? Mayor Hodges is not guilty. This is the first example of jury nullification. Stay the hell out of our town and leave us alone. As a dark side of this, as there almost always is, because treason is the only crime in the federal system for which one can be executed without having caused a death by one's own hands. Treason prosecutions must all be personally approved by the President of the United States. What left-wing pinko creep that didn't understand the Constitution was the President in 1812? James Madison, who wrote the Constitution, who wrote the Bill of Rights, who argued for natural rights and natural law. in Philadelphia in 1787. Good mother of God, somebody like James Madison can go from Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. The right to be left alone is the quintessential American right to, we're going to prosecute you for treason because you sent some soldiers back in order to save the lives of 5 innocents. You can see how we sort of started off on this path, and now, of course, you know where it leads us to today. When I used to start these talks, my iPhone is in my jacket. I'd usually take the iPhone out, and I would say, when President Obama was in office, if you have an iPhone, I want you to leave it on, because I want Barack Obama to hear everything I'm about to say. That is not a joke anymore, A, you can't turn it off. It looks like it's off, but it's not. B, we all accept that America's domestic spies have access to every piece of electronic equipment that we have and use it in real time to capture where it is, what conversations we're having, and what keystrokes we make. And we have members of the judiciary say, well, as long as the information gathered from that spying is not used in a prosecution against you, the government can gather it. Same argument, of course, was made by the Stasi in West Germany, in East Germany, shortly after World War II. When we have judges who can rationalize away the Constitution, it is a very, very dangerous state of affairs. So 2 weeks ago, the Supreme Court ruled that if the government wants to obtain from your service provider the metadata, the information about where the iPhone was located, not the communication on it, but just where it was when you had it in your pocket or your pocketbook, where it was when you had it on the front seat of the car. The government has to get a search warrant. That was a 5-4 decision. That's the 4 liberal justices and the conservative Chief Justice voting together. But the only way they got that majority, the only way they got the Chief Justice is to let him write exceptions in there. Well, there's an exception for emergencies. There's an exception if somebody could die. There's an exception if a child is involved. Where do these exceptions come from? They're not in the Constitution. His oath is to the Constitution, not to the exceptions that come from his own political agenda. So those who are on the freedom side of things and rejoice at this opinion, the government needs a search warrant to find out where your cell phone was, need to read the fine print. Except for an emergency. Guess who gets to define emergency? The police. All right, you're home one day and the doorbell rings, so there's a knock on the door. You open the door, the guy points a gun at you and says, "Give me your money. I want to give it away in your name." The hell is this all about? You call the police. He is the police. He works for the IRS. An unsophisticated way for them to come and take their money and give it away. Why do I give you this rather unrealistic example? Because there are 2 linchpins to the Declaration of Independence. One I described already, that our rights come from our humanity. If you believe in a supreme being, as I do, an old-fashioned, traditional, pre-Vatican II, Latin Mass-attending Roman Catholic, there aren't many of us around, but we're still around. So I believe that the hairs on my head are numbered by God the Father, and that He gave me the ability to reason. He gave me my personal freedom, and it's the greatest gift He can give me. But you don't have to be Catholic or Jewish or even believing in God. I don't think Jefferson believed in God when he wrote this stuff. All you have to believe is that as human beings, as rational human beings, we are the highest capable things on the planet, capable of reason. And by reason alone, we can discern right from wrong and truth from untruth. That's the essence of the natural law. That's the natural law tradition. That is not just an academic argument. When presidents and members of Congress and federal and state judges take an oath to uphold the Constitution, they are upholding the Ninth Amendment. I don't know if he's here. in this room, but the world's foremost authority on the Ninth Amendment is at this gathering, Professor Randy Barnett of Georgetown Law School, who will tell you that the Ninth Amendment was written to compel the government, not remind the government, compel the government to recognize other human rights, other natural rights that are not enumerated in the first 8. It would be impossible to enumerate all the human rights, so that's why the Ninth Amendment is there. Jefferson understood this, Madison understood this. So if my rights are natural, they can only be taken away when my behavior shows that I have waived them, by robbing a bank, by interfering with somebody else's natural rights. But did you consent to a government that could take your rights away by the vote of the majority? Did you ever tell the government, you guys and gals can go to D.C. and you can enact some monstrosity called the Patriot Act, and you can authorize FBI agents to write their own search warrants and bypass the Fourth Amendment? Is there anybody in this room that ever consented to a government that could do that? Well, consent is personal. You can consent to the violation of your own rights. You can't consent to the violation of mine. And you can't consent to the violation of your neighbors. Jefferson said the linchpin of popular government. The linchpin of popular government is not only natural rights, I keep going like this because it comes from the human heart. It's not only natural rights, but the consent of the government. Who in this room has consented to a government that will interfere with private property and personal liberty and individual prosperity? Did any of you consent to the Constitution? Do you consent to it by walking on a sidewalk? Do you consent to it by voting? Suppose the people you voted for were not in power. Did you consent to the others to take your rights away? Or is consent, like fidelity to natural rights, just a myth? Government not only suffers from what St. Augustine called libido dominandi. No, not that kind of libido. I know in Las Vegas. Pretending we're in Paris, make believe. But the lust to dominate. The sending of people to Washington, D.C. and to state capitals, in executive and legislative office, and even in judicial offices, who will try to tell other people how to live. It's a defect in humanity. The old-time Catholics call this original sin, whatever you want to call it. It's a defect, and we must guard against it. We must not vote for people that share this. The other truism that I can draw from this is that government relies upon myth. Government relies upon make-believe. Professor Barnett has a whole chapter or two on make-believe. Make-believe the king is divine. Make-believe he can do no wrong. Make-believe the voice of the people is the voice of God. Make-believe that people even have a voice. Make-believe that the governors work for the people. Make-believe that the governors even care about the people. Make-believe that we have natural rights. Make-believe that we consent to the government. Make-believe that all men are created equal. Make-believe that they're not. That's what we're confronted with today. We live in an inversion, my dear friends. The Constitution and the government it created, that Madison handed it to us, gave us a government that knew nothing about us, and we know everything about it. Today, the government knows our every move and our every thought and our every idea, and half of what it does is in secret. The government that Madison and company gave us needed our permission, expressly our permission, to regulate us and tax us. Today, we need the government's permission to do almost everything. You can't find something in this room that's not regulated by the federal government. That is an inversion. The Madisonian value underlying the Constitution was this: the government is limited. It may only do what is expressly authorized in the Constitution. The Wilsonian attitude, as in Woodrow Wilson, which turns this on its head, said the government can do whatever there is a popular will to support what it wants to do, unless there's an express prohibition in the Constitution. These, my dear friends, are the opposite. Put aside the war between the states, people were shooting at each other, but we lived in the Madisonian blessings from Washington to Wilson. From Wilson to the present, even under Ronald Reagan, we live in the Wilsonian regime, where the government can do whatever it wants as long as there's popular support for it, except for an express prohibition in the Constitution. When I speak to a lot of young people, I scare them a little bit towards the end of what I say. And I tell them, look, I've been doing this for 45 years. And I look and act a little younger than I really am. That Fox. Look, I don't have fingerprints left because my fingers get burned because I sometimes say things against the prevailing views. I'm still there after 20 plus years. But when I die, I expect to die, hopefully in my bed, surrounded by people that love me, faithful to my first principles. But some young people may not have that luxury. They may die in a government prison, faithful to first principles. And some of them may die in a public square to the sound of a government trumpet blaring, faithful to first principles. Primacy of the individual must do more than just lie there. The announcement that I promised you, it's not all gloom and doom now, there is a little happiness in the world. I don't know if some of you remember a late lamented Fox show called Freedom Watch. Guess what? Freedom Watch, returning to Fox. Thank you.